We wanted to make sure to do a little mini business college. What is the hardest stuff about running a cannabis business? In all my time in this industry, I'm a dispensary person. I founded Berkeley Patients Group. I was there for 11 years. We went from 1 staff member to almost 100 members and up to 800 daily visits. We faced every kind of trouble. It wasn't the feds that were the trouble. It was running a business and doing it right. It was cash accounting, like we're going to hear about from Liana held. It was how do we protect our ideas, our name, our intellectual property, our formulas, like we're going to hear about from John Mansfield. What about corporate compliance when we're so heavily regulated? How are we going to make sure that we cross the T's and dot the I's and that all the government regulatory agencies are happy and we can continue going forward? We're going to hear about that from Dave Kopilak. What about licensing and permitting? It's so hard to compete for these permits. We need to know more about that. How are we going to compete? So we're going to have Robert McVeigh talk to us about that. And then Diane Fornbacher coming in. By the way, it's an accountant, 3 lawyers, and Diane's a publisher. What about your corporate goals? Because it all starts with a mission, vision, and values set. How, as cannabis businesses, are we going to set up our mission, vision, and values so that everything that comes afterwards follows that? So that every decision we make about our business is about how are we meeting our goals? How are we helping people? How are we saving the planet? How are we being greener, safer, nicer, kinder? So Diane's going to follow up at the end with a conversation about that.
The most important inventory that you have in your business, from my standpoint, is the cash. People don't realize it, that, inventory has to be done all the time, it has to be checked, and cash is an inventory in our business. In the same way that you think of other products in your business as inventory, you need to think about the cash in the same way. Whatever inventory method you have for the plants, well, you better have a more robust one to count for the cash inventory in your business. I can't tell you how important that is.
Most of you will be, the type of intellectual property you'll be dealing with is trademark, which covers your brand equity. This is really the key asset that most of you will have in any of your businesses. The brand is what you're going to go forward with. Some of you may end up getting patents. There are certain things that are patentable, certain processes and so forth. You may have trade secrets, you may have formulas and things like that. But your brand is really key, and let me give you an example of that. Coca-Cola, whether you like it or not, it's undisputable that Coca-Cola is basically Coke, is basically water and sugar and a few chemicals that are supposed to be secret. Where is the value in Coca-Cola? It's in the brand equity they have developed. They have, from the beginning, protected their name, and that is what's made that into a multi-billion-dollar business. You need to consider that as well with your trademark.
And so what I thought I'd focus on for a few minutes here is what I've learned in the last 4 years and how your industry is different. 80% of it is the same when a client walks in the door, but 20% of it is completely unique, and it just does not exist in other industries, and I hope it would never exist again. But here's some of the issues. Now, 280E, which was mentioned by a couple folks, huge issue, ridiculous statute, but we have to deal with it. So how do we organize things on the front end to best deal with that?
The Cole Memorandum, which I'm sure most of you are familiar with, the most recent Cole Memorandum, that sets out the 8 federal bullet points for what they will and will not sort of allow in regulated states. It's not really directed at the marijuana business owners themselves as much as it's directed at the state regulators. And so the states see it as they don't want to see the feds come in and raid businesses within their state. So the state sees it as their goal to regulate heavily enough and check heavily enough so that you don't have federal agents coming in and raiding businesses because they think the state hasn't done a good enough job complying. So to that extent, try to see the state as being on your side. Issues that we've seen in Washington, Nevada, and Illinois, the main problems that people have really stemmed from the financials, wherein they weren't really able to get their proposed startup costs in line with the startup capital that they're able to show to their state regulators. And every state we've worked in so far has required some type of proof of capital. In Washington, there was no minimum capital that you had to show. You really just had to prove your costs and then prove that you had the money to pay for those costs. In other states like Nevada, you've had to show at least $250,000 liquid plus operational expenses for your first year. So you really need to make sure that the budget that you're putting together and your projected profits and losses for those first years make sense. And you don't want to be optimistic and you don't want to be overly conservative. You want them to be as accurate as possible. And you want to be able to work with your financial team and with your accountants to really verify that those projections make sense, because then you'll know if you're short on capital. Then before you apply for the license, you have some time to go out and find additional business partners or tap into your own resources a little bit more.
Before we go to the last speaker, I want to give a shout out to everybody that's been working against prohibition, getting their business set up in these hard conditions. Thank you. There's people here who have really paid the price. Ed Rosenthal, busted by the feds. Martin Olive, taken down by the IRS. I mean, we really have suffered to bring the industry to where it is now. And I hope that as a community, we keep this institutionalized memory of what we had to go through to get here. And, you know, we can't really count on the federal government. We can't count on prohibition ending unless we do our work. And you know what else? What if everything is great and then it changes and we forget the institutional memory of what happened before, how we fought it, how we organized with our attorneys, how we got ourselves educated from nothing to running big multi-million-dollar businesses. It's been incredible, so I'm very happy to be a part of this industry.
You know, partnerships, responsibility, and community involvement is imperative for our continued respect as we enter this new paradigm of what I consider the mainstream. I am not what I would consider mainstream, but I seem pretty popular as the mom of cannabis with young kids for the newspapers, and I am proud of that. That's not the extent of what I do, however, but it is the primary reason. I want a better tomorrow for my children. In addition to becoming a community partner and participating in Toys for Tots and things like that, we want to continually encourage with our windfall and give back to the community that made it possible for us to make this money. So please remember that, because we will send people to your business. And that's another one of our goals, to find conscientious businesses that care about people, who give back to the community, so we in turn continue the success, their ability to make money, and keep it concentric within the ability to help us all collectively evolve, not just as business, not just as cannabis businesses, not just as cannabis activists, but converge together to really create a new standard from which we can also spring forth even higher than that, okay? So it's continual.
So it's very complicated to set this stuff up, and what we find, it's not a great idea to have to do it after you're being audited and to go back in and go, okay, Liana, can we put you at the cash register now with your 3 sets of stopwatches, and we'll see what people are doing now, and we'll try and apply it back for the 3 years of the audit. That's a disaster. So substantiate now, understand 280E now, absolutely apply your business model to these standards right at the beginning if you can, and if you're not doing it already, do it now and get up to speed.
Let's hear it again for Debby Goldsberry, Diane Fornbacher, Liana, John Mansfield, Robert McAvoy, and Dave Kopilak. Great. That was fantastic.